I want to talk a little bit about we're in a pandemic. We won't always be in a pandemic, but we are in one right now where underlying conditions dramatically impacted people. People lost their lives primarily who have underlying conditions, and most of these underlying conditions are food related, I believe. Do you believe the same thing, Chef Pearl?
Um, yes, I think that the foundation of disease is poor diet, and then after that is poor management of that disease. I mean, because there's three stages of illness. There's prevention, um, there is management, uh, and then it's just preparing. So where do we begin to fix those issues? It's at our very beginning. I mean, my mother, like I said, was a woman with 5 kids. My mother always had the biggest pot of vegetable soup on the planet on her stove. I was fortunate enough to come from a family of great cooks. So, every kid in the neighborhood came to our house. But food was very important in our families, food in terms of it being fresh. I don't know very much about cans, except beans, um, and tomatoes in the wintertime because tomatoes are not available fresh. So for me, it's understanding how it was grown. We got to ask our farm. We got to ask whoever we're purchasing from, how was this food grown, and how was the people that grew it cared for? Because when I learned sustainability, one of the things that came out of that education was it's not just about um, the what was put into the soil, but the people who put that food into the soil. How did you care for them? What kind of justice did you uh, sponsor them in? So I think it's just important that we know where our food come from. And we in this whole sustainable movement, one of the things that we have struggles with is, do I buy organic? Do I buy local? How do I determine which one is more important? That's, you got to do your research to determine. But I don't want chemicals in my food. I don't want additives. I don't want hormones. And I think it's increasingly important that we have that dialogue. And the closer something grows to you, the less likely that it is loaded with pesticides, herbicides, genetically modified. We have to be more aware of what we're putting into our bodies, because that is how health maintains itself. And we need to do this at an early age. I mean, I've seen kids cry because you gave them a carrot because they didn't know what it was. We really, really, really need to understand food and the education of food for our kids. Our kids because of fast food, especially in urban areas. My grandchildren, they cannot go past a fast food place and not beg my son for what's in there. And we fight constantly about that because that's the start of disease. So for me, it's real important that food has to be whole as much as it is, as much as it can come from the ground, be intact.
And that has become so expensive. That fast food, you can get a meal for 99 cents. You can get things for 99 cents at this fast food places. Whole food costs money. And that shouldn't even be. I mean, it's flipped upside down. Neftali, I see you shaking your head. And also, I want to piggyback on something Chef Pearl said about who is picking the food, who is growing the food. We don't spend a lot of time. As a matter of fact, I think we demonize people who actually provide us with the sustenance that we need. We put them in these categories. And as you both pointed out, we don't pay them, we don't respect them, and yet somehow they're responsible for making sure that we eat. How do we shift America's view of the folks that actually are doing the work, the farmers, not just the big farmers, not big farms, but the folks that are actually in the ground, not getting any money, not being able to sustain themselves as well? How do we shift America's view on that?
I think that we have to start thinking of feeding people as the right and moral thing to do, as opposed to something that is an expense. We have to shift away from a capitalistic way of thinking that it costs money to feed people, and instead making sure that we are living and building a society in which is the right and moral way to do. And there are many instances, many ways of doing that. For example, there are many cities around the nation. Seattle comes to mind right now. They increase the minimum wage for restaurant workers. That that has not bankrupted anyone. You know, the pandemic has, but before that, it's working. We have to get away from tipping, from servers and people that work in restaurants living off tips. That's outdated. We have to get away from that. We have to make sure that when we think about food, we think about food holistically. As Chef Pearl was saying, we have to make sure the food is medicine. So where you live, let's make sure that everyone has access to food, whether it's a farmer's market, whether it's an urban farm, whether however it is that you get food close to you. And at the same time, we have to also stop demonizing poverty. Poor people that do not have a car to go a mile and a half, which is considered a food desert. We already talked about food, why we don't like that term, are not gonna be able to go find fresh food, even if it's affordable. Oftentimes it's not. If you're living on minimum wage or receiving food stamps, SNAP, EBT benefits, is not enough money to actually buy really good quality food. So we have to start there. The second one, where we go to school, really influences for our children the long-term health of our communities. We have to make sure the school food gets better. That is nutritious and that has more fruits and vegetables. So those are just some of the examples of how to deal with this situation.